Now, what Zoran invited me to have a chat to you about and to do some actions with was how that can be related to activity. And I mean, it was judo that Feldenkrais took a lot of his ideas from. And I don't know if any of you, Feldenkrais wrote a variety of books, and one of them is Higher Judo. And when you open up the introduction to the book, I can't quote it, but you could be reading about the Feldenkrais method. But he's talking about judo and basically how judo is an art form that can assist people to be more mature and potent. And I don't know, I think I was talking to Kat in the break and she was saying, well, what's the difference between all the martial arts? And there's a number of differences in that both judo and aikido and karate, they're all Japanese martial arts. And judo and aikido take a lot of their techniques from an older art form called jiu-jitsu, and they have taken parts of that in two separate ways. And then there's karate, which comes from a Japanese prefecture called Okinawa, where they were farmers. And so karate's got a lot of kicking and punching, where judo is a lot about I think they all have the idea of that similar organisation, that they come from the hara, but within different forms. And judo might have more throws, but it also, you have to think, when Feldenkrais came across the judo, I'm sure Zoran could tell me more of the time frame, but before the Second World War, he had the opportunity to meet Kano, and Kano was the founder of judo. And so it's quite an interesting story that prior to being in Paris at that time, Feldenkrais was in Palestine, and he was part of the Jewish resistance, which I can never pronounce, Haganah, and he was working out how Jewish people could defend themselves against attack. So, Narayan, can I get you to come up? Now, I'm just going to strike you, but I'm not going to hit you. So if you stand there, so this is what Feldenkrais did. So he got a lot of people, and he'd go, ha! And then he'd say, oh, so stay in that posture, ha! And you think, okay, that's what that person does. How can I make that into a martial technique? So looked for that's all, thanks. He looked for people's natural response or their habit when they were under attack, and then he took that into something functional and productive. So if you think of his thinking, that's so Feldenkrais, isn't it? If you think we look at our habits and then we look at ways of working with them and changing them so that we can increase our functional capacity. But Feldenkrais, when he was doing that, he wrote his first book on the martial arts, and it's called Unarmed Combat, and it's just this tiny little book. But he decided at that time it was a good time to get out of Palestine because the English authorities wouldn't be very happy with what he'd done. So then he landed in Paris, and I mean, there's a whole story about his life in Paris, working as a physicist at the Sorbonne University. But then at the same time, Kano was in town, the founder of judo, and he was doing a demonstration. And someone told Feldenkrais about it, and this event was only by invitation. So Feldenkrais, being Feldenkrais, took along his little book, walked up to the doorman and said, I'd like to see Kano. Can you show him this? So, the Japanese, you've got to think, it's a very respectful culture, so he most likely would have got a nod. And the man went off and showed Kano the book. And he looked at it, and there was one technique that fascinated him that he hadn't seen before. So he invited Kano into the event and afterwards to have a discussion with him. And that began their relationship. And he said to Feldenkrais, where did you get this technique? And he said, I made it up. And he said, well, I think it was a weapons taking technique. He said, I haven't seen it. I'll take it back to Japan and try it out in my dojo, which is a club. And if it's effective, we'll, put it in our syllabus. And after many meetings with Feldenkrais, he decided that Feldenkrais would be a person who could bring judo to Europe. So then Feldenkrais trained with the top judo people, the senior students, for a number of years, learning the art, and he set up a judo school in Paris. And I think, if you think Feldenkrais also from his mechanical background, judo in those days, there weren't any weight distinctions, there wasn't any competition. So a smaller man, it was designed for a smaller man to be able to throw a large man. So again, if you think with Feldenkrais, how can you be most efficient in your movement and biomechanically sound? And I think from that, has a huge influence on his method. And I think, Zoran, you were telling me that Feldenkrais also taught judo in Scotland. And he sort of then started exploring how to teach it, but also he started playing with it in terms, of looking at it maybe more how we'd look at a FI. And I became interested in the martial arts during Zoran and my Feldenkrais training. And there were two teachers in particular that attracted my attention. And one was a lady called Elizabeth Beringer. And I guess my natural tendency, if you think 30 years ago, I was pretty laid back. I'd just be walking along. And Elizabeth had intent. She'd see something and she'd be, regardless if there are 100 people or more in the room, she'd just be zoom. And I thought, I'd like to do that. And then there was Dennis Leary, who Susan and Zoran have mentioned. And I was very fortunate to have FIs with both of them. And particularly the FI from Dennis, it was just amazing. I can still, nearly 30 years on, think of parts of that lesson. And I couldn't get off the table for hours. And it totally changed my posture. And it was just a wonderful experience. And I thought, what did they do? Or how did they organize themselves in those lessons that affected me in that way, where other trainers gave me great lessons, but they weren't at that same, I wouldn't say level, they didn't have that same effect on me. And at that time, I was also, one of the other people that trained with us was a karate teacher, Dolph, and I was giving some FI to a judo teacher. And they both said to me, do Aikido, go to Barry Knight. And I think why they suggested Aikido, because Aikido doesn't use muscular strength. And I think judo, there might be exceptions to the rule, but I think it's changed a lot since they've introduced competitions. And people of the same weight, fight each other. So possibly, in my way of thinking, an element of how they organise themselves may have returned, or not be as efficient as it could be, shall we say. And so I started Aikido, which would have been in the early 90s. And I think it was in my second lesson. It was a bit daunting because there were about 20 people in the room. And I think there might have been one other girl. But I thought, I'll do this. And then also it was visual learning. So in a martial art, the teacher just does a visual demonstration. And I'm not the greatest visual learner. So, I was struggling with my footwork. And Sensei Barry came up and said, doesn't matter what you do, it's how you do it. And so I thought I'd found my Aikido home. And I think the other thing that Barry was also, if you think of martial arts, they're very, I was going to say a bit like puppy dogs, pedigree, who was your teacher? And so Barry actually trained in Japan, I think in the 60s, with Saito. And Saito was one of Weishiba, the founder of Aikido's senior students. And Barry's just a natural explorer, has a wonderful curiosity. And he will tell you stories about when he was in Japan, he did a technique with someone and it felt different. And he wanted to know what that difference was. So he's constantly doing what we do here, bringing variations into what we do, sub-exercises, and exploring Aikido from not just the forms, but the organization. So there's two things, quotes, before we get into action, I'll leave you with. And one is with Aikido, it's looking for the path of least resistance and to remove the discord from your mind. So on that note, what we're going to do, we're going to explore some movements of the hara with the weapons, and I'm going to do a costume change and put on my Aikido outfit. Because I was talking to Zoran, because my dear husband said, go on, go on. I'm going, oh, I don't want to. Anyway, but then we thought, well, it's a cultural thing. And, you know, our Feldenkrais training was just incredibly relaxed, to say the least. You know, it started off, you meant to start at 12. By the second week, we were starting at 12:30. So, you know, there wasn't that rigour. And Aikido, you walk in, if you were late a minute, you'd have to bow on in front of 20 people. Wonderful for my punctuality. So, and I was saying to Zoran, and we're thinking, because, you know, the thing of culture, because I see a lot of similarities in what I've learned, in a sense, from Aikido and Feldenkrais, but the cultures are totally different. So I thought that would be interesting if we do a little Aikido thing over there. And Zoran made a point about the outfit, which I hadn't thought about. Which, do you want to talk about whilst I get changed, Zoran?
So, you know, in different cultures, they have different national dress. Not all cultures are like that, but many are. Now, in formal martial arts practice, especially Japanese martial arts, there is a costume that you put on. There is a dress that you put on. Generally, it's called a gi, and it's a top like that and some pants. But in Aikido, I think it's when you reach a certain level, you are then permitted. When you get a black belt, you're allowed to wear the hakama, which is, as you'll see in a moment. I don't need to describe them. Now, what's interesting about the garb is where the belt is put, where the knot is, where the hakama gets tied, and the fact that the top is white, the bottom is black. And so there's a visual divide between the top of the body, the bottom of the body. The shape of if you look at the shape of the costume, it has kind of a bell shape to it. It looks heavier at the bottom, which is already influencing this word that Ruth mentioned, the word hara. And hara means down here in the navel, which just below the navel, about 3 fingers, which just happens to coincide with the static body's center of mass. This is where everything is. And I'll let Ruth give you a feeling for it, but you have already been exploring the feeling of hara, especially in that lesson where you were the other day breathing here and doing this. And some of you discovered that there was great play in what you were doing, and yet you felt, ooh, that's hara. Yeah. So this costume, look at that. It's great. Yeah. Yeah. Can you see that? The way people dress when you're engaged in a formalized practice is not an accident. Yeah, it's designed.
And I always loved the look of these, because look at the back. So I always thought it was stylish in my strange way. Okay, so we're now going to go over here. And in terms of culture, just so you get the feel of it, what I'll get you to do is to line up in a few rows. And in an Aikido dojo, here is a photo of O-sensei. And what we do at the beginning of each class is we bow on. And so I'll get you to go through the process with me. Okay, so there's two ways of doing it, but we'll do it from kneeling. So if you want to kneel down, if you can't, you can stand up. And you don't have to worry that much about the clapping, but I'd be here, and then I bow. And then I clap. And I turn around and say, Onegashimasu. And everyone replies, Onegashimasu, which means welcome to the mat, basically. And in Aikido, there's both weapons work and hand-to-hand. So we're going to do some weaponry. And this is called the bokken, which is a wooden sword. And there's the idea in Aikido that when you're working with these, you think of them like they're active, like they're live. And so, some of the moves, there's a lot of katas that you do. Most of Aikido is partner work. So I'll get you to do some of the katas, which are, just sort of coming up and cutting. And this is the jo, which is a longer staff and has a lot more application because it hasn't got as a defined shape. And, you might do things, what's more of a funny one? But that's within a partner practice. But what I thought we'd start off is with doing a continuation on what you did yesterday. And that's just, you can stay like that or come to standing. But you know how you're in the chairs and you had your hands on your lower abdomen and you were pushing out the lower abdomen, and what I'll get you to do is to push out your lower abdomen and just breathe out. Maybe come up to standing, you might be more comfortable standing. So just breathing out, and your sort of hands are above your pubis, and you're just breathing out and feeling as you breathe out how you can push out your lower abdomen. And then coming in, and think of all the cylinder that we've been doing. And breathe out through your mouth. So in Aikido, there's what's called a koku breath, is the exhalation when you throw someone. And there's also what's called a ki. And the idea of the ki is that it harmonizes your intention with your movement. And it's a yell, basically, a belly yell. So what you're going to do, you're going to go from breathing out to ha! And feel how that engages those muscles. So, are you happy to do that? Just play with it. And I used to hate this. I used to go, ha! You go, no, 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 no. Yeah. Oh, well, that's a whole breath. So it's like, ha! So you really sort of, as you're yelling, you're sort of letting your tummy go out. Just, ha! Or it might be, hee! Hurt! 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 Great. Well done. Okay. So now we're going to, I've got a whole lot of weapons there. I'm not sure if there's quite enough for everyone. And so what we're going to do is a strike with the bokken. And now the thing that I don't think we've covered in the segment up to date, we've done a lot of the ha and the breathing, but if you think of a martial art, that's in a sense your power source, but it has to be transmitted to your opponent. So, there's a real thing of your base of your support and your foundation, but there's also a quality in your arms. So if I was going to try to push someone, even if I was engaged here, but my arm was floppy, it's not going to go anywhere. So, there has to be this fullness of the arm. And in Aikido, there's a major concept called the spokes and the wheel. So if you think of a wheel, your hara is the hub of the wheel and your arms are the spokes. And again, if you think of a spoke of a wheel, if the tensile quality is not correct, it's not going to connect to the rim. So you're not going to have any effect on whatever's on is your rim, which in Aikido would be an opponent. So now I'll show you what we do, and then I'll get you to get a weapon and come back. So what you're going to do is you're going to be here. And Aikido, if you look at the footwork, it's a Hamni stance with one foot facing forward and one behind. And the idea is that, yeah, practice that. So I can be here, but then if I want to turn to see my opponent, I can easily just pivot on my feet and turn, or I can go halfway. Okay. So starting off, yeah, and it's sort of, it's kind of you turn, but what we're going to do with the bokken is you're just going to have your feet in the Hamni, and then you're going to take a step forward and bring the other foot up. Okay, so sort of step, and it's a lot about lowering your center of gravity and coming forward. And then you're going to do that with either a sword and some joes. So then it looks like this. You're coming up. I step back with the front foot. I come forward and I cut down. So maybe I'll just bring, or a few people maybe just come and we'll just pass out the weapons. Now there's a variety. So I think if you're a stronger, taller person, maybe take a joe, and some of them are quite weighted and some aren't as heavy. The joe is the long staff. There's a now I don't know. So you might even want to spread more out, because I'm thinking you don't want to hit each other on the head. Or come forward so that you maybe stagger the rows so that there's no one directly behind you. Has everyone got are there enough weapons? Yeah. Okay. So just be mindful of the person that you're at a safe distance, basically. And then, I don't know, you'll have to start off with the right foot in front and the left one behind. Then you're going to bring the bokken or the joe. You've got a reasonable distance between your hands. And now the idea is that the left hand is at the end of the weapon, and then you're coming up and you're breathing in. And then feel where is the point that you want to exhale. And you sort of stop with your hands approximately at your waist level, and do that a few times, and feel as you're transitioning to do the cut, what happens in your hara. Can you get a sense of, as you're cutting down, that the hara, your lower abdomen, is protruding? Okay, and then do it with the ki. And do that a few times and feel if it changes your experience. Does it help you to think or sense your lower abdomen? And then notice as you do that, because Aikido is a lot about intent and attention. So then think that there's someone in front of you. I think you might want to hit, but just which might not be a good thing. But also, like I was talking to Zoran, because Aikido is very much about, if you think of a martial art, you have to take in as much of the environment as possible, because there might be someone behind me that's attacking. So as you do it, instead of hitting the person in front, just think that there might be someone behind you. And so as you strike, sort of broaden your awareness and do the same thing, And notice if that changes how you're standing or how you're using yourself. So again, breathing in, we'll do it together. I'll step this way. Okay, so coming up, feeling when you engage, and then ha! Okay. So the other thing that I always found really funny when I started Aikido, when the teacher wanted our attention, he'd just go, and everyone would rush over to the side of the room and sit down. Very different to what happens in here, really. But we can put your weapons down. Maybe just put them back over there, because we won't use those anymore. Now, I'm not sure how many people we've got, but I'm thinking what we'll do is, the next thing I'll show you is in a group of 3. And so I'm not going to show you the particular Aikido technique because I think it's a bit too complex. So what I'm showing you is a sub-exercise. And I'm thinking how we can set it up. Maybe a volunteer or 2. Yeah, all right? Okay. No. Kevin was just volunteering Sue. Okay, so what you're going to do, you're going to have your hands out straight in front of you. So you're just going to be like this for the purpose. Okay, and you can have your feet together. But what Narayan's doing is it is coming from the sword. So if I hold the sword and you watch, I bring my hands into that position. So what we're going to do is you're going to be standing like this, and someone's going to test your balance. So if Narayan just stands like that, and then you're gently going to see in the 3 of you, if I push him forward, what happens? And then if I just give him a gentle lean to the side. And again, my style of Aikido works with resistance, but resistance is used as a learning tool. Okay, so then I'd say to Narayan, reach out your arms more, so that, like, yep, a bit lower down, so relax your shoulders. And you're reaching, and then you're sort of shaking your hands together. Or if I put my hand on your tummy, okay, and then push out your stomach, yeah, and keep it out. And then if I was going to touch you, you'd be much more stable. So it's a combination of attention. So also, if Narayan really focuses on me, I was going to say seduce him, but I'm going to get him to fall in. Not in that way. But I'm going to get his attention. So you have to ignore your opponent. So I think what we'll do is we'll have one person here doing what Narayan's doing. And the idea is that you're reaching out and you're sort of nearly shaking your hands. Then there's going to be a person just to start with testing your balance. And then the third person is going to have their hand here and give some instruction of reaching out. And as you push or expand your lower abdomen, it stays pushed out. And then repeating the movement. Sound all right? I'll come around. No. That's the idea of the shaking, is like if Narayan just wants to do it to me. So say, like, traditionally I'd be like this. And if you want to just try and get my balance, Narayan, by pushing me a bit on the shoulder. Okay, so then I might think, oh, he's got me. So then I'm going out here to distract myself from the person pushing, and I'm lowering my center. So the idea is that we do that every class. So it's sort of a mind focus and a stabilizing by really using your hara. So give it a go, all right? Yeah, you keep it out.
And you just keep the breathing natural.
Yep, you breathe naturally, and you sort of I often use my peripheral vision, or I look into the distance and see as much of the room as I can take in, so that I'm not getting distracted by the person. So have a go. So groups of 3, one person, and you're going to sort of rotate round. And I mean, as I say, we do this every session. So pick one person's going to have their arms out in front of them. Your feet are relatively close together. So like this would be one of the focal management tests that you do. So bring your feet reasonably close together and bring your arms out in front of you at about waist level, which comes from the sword. So you have to bring them a little bit lower. Okay. Yep. And then one person's just going to test. So one person's doing it, the other person's pushing and pulling, and you're trying to stay stable. And then someone pushing on the shoulders. Okay, so have a bit lower, yeah. And so just reaching out. And look at me, and yeah. And not too hard to push. So think also like, you're just trying to get an idea of how the hara can make you more stable in your attention, and you're not over pushing or pulling because it's too difficult. Yep. Not at first, so if you're just there, Nina. Yeah, so I'm just sort of pushing forward. So it's sort of, yeah, and I'm seeing what happens, and then I'm just on the shoulders a bit. And then you're tightening up in here, but by breathing out, by expanding your abdomen. And then you leave it out, Nina. So it's like a balloon you're pushing. And I often find the hand there helps. So maybe a little less girl. No. Okay, yeah. Okay, and then I'd bring your arms a little bit lower. Yeah, and then you're happy to someone put your hand there. And you're pushing out against it. That won't work. Now straighten your knees, Narayan. Okay, and then reach out here. And relax your shoulders. Yep, and then go. And think of really reaching. So like, it's like, they'd say like there's water coming through your arms. So you're sort of reaching out. So they're not floppy, and you just sort of think like you're reaching to get my hand. Oh, okay. Yep, and then see. Okay. Yep, and then relax here. Not relax, but sort of like, feel like shaking your hands out here. Really shake them quickly. And reaching. I think, huh? You're sweating.
Well, yeah, mate.
Yeah. That's really hot, right? Yeah, you look like we've gone round.
That's amazing. Because I could feel the tension in his
tummy
going back and forth, back and forth. The moment he would start to concentrate on it, would just go back
diminish.
and then come out, go back.
So if you haven't swap round so that everyone has a go. Oh, the idea when you shake is that you're shaking so quickly that, like a line, it then becomes flat. So, if you go really quickly, it's a distractor, but it's also teaching you to be away from your opponent. And it's sort of then a stillness that increases your stability. I don't know if I've explained it very well, Anna.
How do you get that shape? Because that's like quite a deep internal when you're doing it. It's not like a...
No, it's just a vibration, yeah. Oh. I'm doing it like it's like that. If I was doing it big, but I'm just making it really small. Yeah. Yeah. No. No. Okay. No. So has everyone had a go? Okay. So I think a few things have come up. So Emma was saying, is it a thing of tonus? And in Feldenkrais terms, it's most likely equipoise. And that you're really working very centrally. And it is very much of a focus of attention. Because if I'm focused, so if I'm here, and someone's trying to get my balance, but I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to be pushed over, it's not going to work. So you've got to let go of all of that and just really think outward and pay attention to what you're doing. So in Aikido, it's really about how you organize your mind and body within the technique. And as a result of that, the person you're working with may end up on the floor. But it's not that's your goal, if that makes sense. So now we're going on to play with my last idea for today. Did anyone bring any sarongs in? Or cloth? We might have enough. I brought some in. I don't think everybody needs one. I'll show you. Can I demonstrate on you? So what you're going to do, I think we'll do it in groups of 3, so I most likely have enough anyway. But you're sort of going to create a pretend Aikido belt and wrap it around the person. And you could maybe tie a knot. Okay. And then maybe, does everyone, say it in your groups of 3, as long as one person has that on them to start with, and then we'll go into the next piece. You can choose whichever one you like, Narayan. I don't know. Oh, I didn't bring my husband with me to do. Oh no, he's got a bad hip. You want it quite tight. No, not. Yeah, the idea is you can just tie it at the back. And I mean, well, you're right. You can't get away. I mean, people can. Yeah, it's firm. So. Do you want one, Jenny? You've got one? Well, just make it, swap rounding will be easier, that's all. Do you want one, Jenny? They're going to, yeah. So you've got one, pop another one on, because we'll swap round. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some walking. So, I mean, I think we'll do it in a 3, but I just thought if there's extras, it'll save you swapping around. But maybe what I'll get you to do is to have the idea, watch me walk. So if I walk in Aikido, I'll take my weapon because that's fun. But if I'm walking, I take one step forward and I cut and take the other step. Then I slide my foot forward, move off line of attack and do another cut. So the movement is that you have one foot forward and then the other, and you have to think down in your hara, and then you're sliding the foot forward, and then you shift your weight forward and bring the other foot behind. And then you come forward. Yep. Okay. We'll do one more. So that's the basic movement. And then what we're going to do, who wants to grab my hakama from behind? Okay. So, yep. You can both have a go. So the idea is, now as I said, we use resistance, but you don't want to be bloody minded that you're wanting to really give the person so much resistance so they can't move. Because resistance is like, in Aikido, is like our floor in an ATM. It gives you feedback on how you're organizing yourself. So if I'm organizing myself well and Kat's just trying to push back a bit, then I can still move forward. It's a bit much, Kat. Coming forward here. And then I can come forward and I draw Kat with me. And what I'm trying to do is keep upright and just slowly walk forward. So base of support shifting, small step, and the person comes forward. So that's what you're going to do with each other. So again, enough resistance so they have to work a bit, but not so much that they can't. And the third person is going to watch how they organize themselves. And I'm not going to give you any more clues for now. And maybe do it so like logistically, if you maybe think you want to walk, or you could walk up here if we line up. Yeah. Okay. So the person behind is just going to grab the belt and the person's going to try and walk forward, and you're going to see if they stay upright or if they lean forward, what they do. Sorry? Yep. And they can try pushing it out, but you just have the idea of how to organize yourself as you're walking and see. Because at any point in that movement, you want to be stable. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, now. And notice if your person's leaning forward, because people will tend to walk forward with their chest rather than stay upright. So if you think what Feldenkrais was after, yeah, and then change roles when you've done it. And notice if you're thinking of down here as you're moving, or if you're thinking of up here and leading. And if you take a big step, it's harder to be upright. Okay, so really, the third person, give your partner feedback if you see them leaning forward. Because some of you are leaning forward with your upper body as you try to step forward, instead of thinking down, taking a smaller step and shifting your weight across your feet. Okay. You've all had a go? So Kat, look up and just think of shifting your whole weight first and then sliding the foot. All right, so now what did you observe about the person walking forward against resistance? What were some of the what did you see them do? So if you think Feldenkrais, with the martial arts, he was interested in generating power. So if you think you've got your hara, you've got a solid foundation, but you have to have a long spine. You have to be lengthening in your body. And so does somebody want to, can I volunteer someone, or does anyone want to? Maybe you hold on to me here, Raymond. I'll show you what I saw some people doing, just there. So if Raymond gives me resistance, what a lot of people do is this, leading from here. But if you think, if you're long, you just want to be long and shift your weight. So now, this could be a little ambitious, but we'll give it a go. So does somebody want to put their hand on my chest? But over here. You're going to stand in front of me. So the idea is that Anne puts a bit of weight here, and I'm going to walk forward. And so to do that, I still have to think of the same process, that one foot comes forward, then I slowly move, and then I shift my other leg. And again, just give enough resistance that the person can move. And a helpful hint is that if Anne has her hand here, so it's intent, and I'm thinking, I'm going to push Anne, I'm going to come forward. When if I think of Raymond at the back, I think I'm going to just move my pelvis forward and have my attention in its sense backward. I'm more likely to be able to walk forward. So have a go.
That's interesting.
Different feeling? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She was a rock. Lots of power.
Yeah. Oh, Anna. Okay. I think we'll leave it there. So if you like to just take off your belts and pop them over there. And then before we finish, we're going to finish as we would in an Aikido class. So I'm going to clap. You're going to line up and sit down on your knees. I'm over here. Okay. So thank you for exploring with me a bit of Aikido and that idea of the organisation that I feel Feldenkrais took from the martial arts, of really being connected to the hara, the ground, and the idea of length. But now we're going to bow off, and it's the same thing, only different words. So I would face O Sensei. Domo arigato gozaimashita, which is basically thank you very much for training. And if it wasn't a class, you'd be lined up hierarchical from most senior student to most junior. And whoever you've trained with, you have to bow off to them in order. But we won't do that. So now I'll pass you back to Zoran. Thank you.